Subcommittee on Coast Guard and Maritime Transportation will come to order. I ask unanimous consent that the chairman be authorized to declare a recess at any time during today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that members not on the subcommittee be permitted to sit with the subcommittee at today's hearing and ask questions. Without objection, so ordered. As a reminder, if members insert a document into the record, please also email it to documents@ti@mail.house.gov. I now recognize myself for the purpose of an opening statement for 5 minutes. The maritime industry is undergoing a rapid period of transformation, and including the adoption of autonomous technology and robotics that could transform the sector, as well as threats from drones and cyber attacks that require increased vigilance. Last February, in our hearing, America Builds Maritime Infrastructure, we noted that the need for the United States Coast Guard to rapidly deploy a regulatory framework to enable these technologies to operate safely. We are here today to discuss both the Coast Guard's efforts to regulate an industry incorporating these technologies, as well as its own use of these advanced maritime technologies. To do that, I'd like to welcome our witnesses. Forgive me if I don't get your names pronounced just right, but I'll do my best. Rear Admiral David C. Barata. Is that correct? Barata? Thank you. Deputy Commandant for Operations Policy and Assistant Commandant for Intelligence for the United States Coast Guard. Rear Admiral Jason P. Tama, Commander, Coast Guard, Cyber Command. Mr. Andrew Van I get it? Director of Physical Infrastructure for the Government Accountability Office. And Ms. Heidi C. Perry, I got that one. The Chair of the National Academies of Sciences, report on leveraging unmanned science systems for the Coast Guard missions. And I want to thank you all for being here today. The One Big Beautiful Bill and the President's leadership have provided an incredible jump start for the Coast Guard to leverage new technologies to meet its future mission needs, including strengthening its ability to confront terrorists, drug gangs that are bringing poison to our shores. Force Design 2028, the Coast Guard's strategic plan to modernize and transform the service into a technology-advanced and agile force, is leading these efforts. Today is an opportunity to understand how the Coast Guard will leverage new technologies through its initiatives like the creation of the Robotics and Unmanned Systems Office and new Robotics Mission Specialist rating to meet future needs. We also hope to understand how the Coast Guard is adapting to meet national security needs and promote interoperability with Department of War efforts like Operation Southern Spear. However, as federal agencies and our military incorporate innovations such as the autonomous surface vessels and robotic aircraft to achieve maritime domain dominance, the Coast Guard is also charged with ensuring these technologies and safely integrated into the maritime transportation system. This requires adopting current regulatory frameworks that balance safety and innovation to account for unmanned barges, spaceship, drone ships, and other use of artificial intelligence in the maritime domain. The Coast Guard's collaboration and coordination with the other agencies, as well as with state and local governments and industry stakeholders, will be essential to its ability to meet known and not yet anticipated threats of the future. Thank you all again for being here today, and I look forward to hearing our discussion. I now recognize Ranking Member Carbajal for an opening statement for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Ezell. As usual, I will defer to our ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Chair Ezell and Ranking Member, for holding today's hearing today. I appreciate it very much. Automation is going to play an increasingly important role in both commercial, maritime, and in Coast Guard operations. Coast Guard UAVs, engine automation, use of uncrewed vessels, and the better collection and use of data will expand the reach of the service. However, new technology comes with increased costs, and to be most effective, the Coast Guard should adopt technology that supports its missions and lightens the load for service members. For instance, UAVs can increase the reach of the Coast Guard search and rescue operations, but no technology can replace cutters in the water or helicopters in the air. Technology must supplement and not supplant the work of service members. Technology in the commercial maritime industry presents great opportunities, including lowering emissions and improving safety, but we need rules to govern the use of those new technologies. The international maritime industry, where ships are often owned by investors built in one country, registered in a different country, and operated by mariners from all over the world, that is defined by a complicated framework of regulations and oversight. In 2021, the Mayflower autonomous ship, a full-size research vessel, crossed the Atlantic without humans on board to demonstrate the progress and rapid development of autonomous vessel technology. At the time of the voyage, the Coast Guard classified the vessel as a pleasure craft because it lacked an appropriate regulatory framework. Yet in the years since, the Coast Guard has failed to update regulations to ensure maritime safety. Current law assumes vessels are crewed by people. Developing effective regulations to govern the use of autonomous vessels will be a major undertaking, requiring coordination between Congress, the Coast Guard, labor, industry, and the IMO. We also have to consider the automation's impact on maritime jobs. Maintaining strong middle-class jobs associated with the maritime industry is integral to maintaining safety and security at sea and in ports. When something goes wrong, I take comfort in knowing there are capable captains, engineers, and longshore workers ready to respond. The development of new vessels is an opportunity as well to incorporate low and zero carbon emission technologies into vessel design. Many vessels in use today use bunker fuel, which emit gas and pollutants linked to climate change and respiratory disease. I'm very pleased in my home state, as an example, we're in the process of building a fleet of hybrid electric ferries. Our state ferry system is the largest in the U.S. and the biggest contributor of greenhouse gases among all Washington state agencies. This transition to hybrid electric ferries will greatly reduce pollution in the Puget Sound. The rest of the world is moving in the same direction. I believe that with targeted investments, U.S. carriers, ports, and shipyards lead the way. So at their best, new technologies increase safety and efficiency, reduce emissions, and create better opportunities for workers. At their worst, new technologies introduce security vulnerabilities, decrease safety, increase the risk of accidents, and displace workers. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses on how we can ensure a smooth and safe transition to new maritime technologies. And while I will note I was originally excited about the topic of this hearing and plan to use my time to address all the ways we can better improve the Coast Guard's technological capabilities, I do need to reiterate that I'm very disappointed in how the Coast Guard itself has chosen to move forward with their new anti-harassment policy that downgrades hateful and divisive symbols in the workplace, and I'll continue to work with the Coast Guard so that it can improve on behalf of the Coasties. So I'll reserve some of my questions to discuss this decision by the Commandant and look forward to the rest of the testimony. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Briefly, Mr. Carbajal, you recognize.
Thank you, Chair Ezell, and thank you for calling today's hearing. In recent history, Congress has recognized the importance of innovation in maritime industry and the importance of providing the U.S. Coast Guard with the state-of-the-art technology. Just this year, with the passage of the Coast Guard Authorization Act of 2025 and the Budget Reconciliation Package, the Coast Guard is poised to make huge strides towards modernization that will significantly increase its capabilities. It is important, however, that Congress complement reconciliation funding with robust, sustained support through increased annual appropriations. On December 8th, the Coast Guard transmitted the report on the implementation strategy on their unmanned systems program. In this report, the Coast Guard detailed its plan resulting from the National Academy of Sciences report. I am looking forward to hearing more about this strategic plan during today's hearing. The two major themes that come to mind as we start to discuss the Coast Guard's investments in autonomous systems are mission enhancement and implementation. We know that Coast Guard operations have been utilizing both autonomous and UAV technology for quite some time. Having eyes in the sky without a traditional pilot provides a service with the opportunity to save flight hours and resources, not to mention the technology is highly effective. But as we enter a new era of sophistication, I have concerns that the Coast Guard does not have the experience or expertise to effectively leverage new technology. New technology must be laser-focused on bolstering the capacity of service members to conduct operations. Turning to the commercial maritime sector, there is no question that the Coast Guard and the IMO are lagging with regard to the development of regulations that govern new technology. In cases that have resulted in delayed adoption of new technology, such as alternative fuels and others, the absence of regulations has created safety and environmental risks. The Coast Guard is the premier agency of setting safety standards on the water. We must give the Coast Guard the tools and the authorities they need to ensure safety in the future. The Coast Guard must also be proactive. A thorough approach to the regulation of new technology must include labor organizations, technology experts, international collaboration, and port and vessel operators. I would be remiss if I did not mention the impact that automation has on the cybersecurity infrastructure of U.S. ports and vessels. I would like to hear about how the Coast Guard is currently addressing automation and the associated risks to national security and supply chain. While I plan to focus my questions on the topic of today's hearing, I must reiterate the comments made by Ranking Member Larson. It is inexcusable and outrageous that just yesterday the Coast Guard published a policy that classifies the display of swastikas and snoozes as a potentially divisive. Nooses and swastikas are not potentially divisive. Their display constitute a hate crime, as was acknowledged in past policy. We'll discuss this issue further during my 5 minutes of questions. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Briefly, I'd like to take a moment to explain the lighting system to our witnesses. There are 3 lights in front of you. Green means go, yellow means you're running out of time, and red means you need to conclude your remarks. I ask unanimous consent that the witness's full statements be included in the record. Without objection, so ordered. I ask unanimous consent that the record of today's hearing remain open until such time as our witnesses have provided answers to any questions that may be submitted to them in writing. Without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that the record remain open for 15 days for any additional comments and information submitted by members or witnesses to be included in the record of today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. As your written testimony has been made part of the record, the committee asks that you limit your oral remarks to 5 minutes. With that, Admiral Barata, you are recognized for 5 minutes for your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman Izell, Ranking Member Carbajal, Ranking Member Larson, distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for your strong support of the Coast Guard. We are honored to appear before you today to provide updates on the Coast Guard's use and governance of novel and emerging marine technology and autonomous systems. The Coast Guard remains committed to ensuring our nation's safety, security, and prosperity. Through Force Design 2028 and the historic investments from the Congress in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the Coast Guard is accelerating and increasing the adoption and deployment of new technologies to counter evolving threats and enhance mission execution. Thanks to these 2 initiatives, as well as your continued strong support, we are better prepared to meet the increasing demands, complexities, threats, and promises of emerging technology. The Coast Guard operates unmanned aircraft systems across 3 lines of effort: long, medium, and short range. Integrated with our legacy assets, these systems provide proven results and enhance our abilities to locate mariners in distress, disrupt illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing in the Indo-Pacific and the Gulf of America, challenge activity in the Arctic that threatens national security, and interdict illicit drugs and aliens before they reach our shores. Notably, the Coast Guard established the Robotics and Autonomous Systems Program Executive Office to drive the adoption of autonomous capabilities across all service missions. We also appreciate Congress's reauthorization of the Department of Homeland Security Counter-Unmanned Aircraft Systems Authority, recognizing that unmanned aircraft systems are only a subset of the broader unmanned systems threat. Today, the Coast Guard is also managing emerging safety risks associated with private and commercial unmanned and vessel operations across the marine transportation system through our existing authorities, while also developing more robust domestic and international governance frameworks. The Coast Guard leads engagement at the International Maritime Organization, which is working to finalize the Maritime Autonomous Surface Ship, or MAS code, by December 2026. This non-mandatory code will establish international guidance for unmanned and remotely operated international cargo vessels. Domestically, the Coast Guard is leveraging lessons learned from the At-Sea Recovery Operations Pilot Program to support the commercial space sector's use of unmanned ships and to develop an appropriate governance framework. Unmanned systems are only one example of the emerging technologies entering the maritime sector. Marine fuel technologies continue to evolve and are shaping the design of shipboard propulsion systems. These technologies represent opportunities to strengthen America's maritime dominance, and the Coast Guard is taking active steps to ensure their safety while providing and promoting innovation. We continue to leverage existing equivalency and alternative design authorities to enable new technology while streamlining approval processes. For example, we recently updated the Alternate Compliance Program to simplify certification of vessels using alternative fuels and lithium-ion batteries, directly benefiting new ship construction projects and charting a clear regulatory path to expand the U.S. dual-fuel fleet. In addition, the Coast Guard recently established a Maritime Nuclear Policy Division tasked with creating a comprehensive framework to govern the safe and secure adoption of nuclear technologies, both internationally and domestically. These efforts provide clear pathways for integrating new technologies onto commercial vessels without compromising the safety of the marine transportation system. We thank Congress for your continued support in effectively implementing and managing autonomous maritime technologies across Coast Guard missions to control, secure, and defend U.S. borders and maritime approaches, facilitate the flow of commerce, vital to economic prosperity, and to respond to crises and contingencies. I appreciate the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Gentleman yields. Chair now recognizes Admiral Tama for your 5 minutes of testimony.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman Ezell, Ranking Member Larson, Ranking Member Carvajal, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for your strong support of the Coast Guard and for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss changes in maritime technology alongside Rear Admiral Barata, Mr. Von Ah from GAO, and Ms. Perry from the National Academies. I am honored here today to represent the talented, dedicated, and highly professional men and women of U.S. Coast Guard Cyber Command, who work tirelessly to protect the nation's maritime transportation system, counter our adversaries in cyberspace, and defend Coast Guard networks and systems. I am honored to be joined in the audience by my Command Master Chief, Frank Tattoo, a third-generation Coast Guard Master Chief who is my senior enlisted leader and trusted advisor, and is here today representing our incredible workforce. The marine transportation system is the backbone of the United States economy and contributes over $5 trillion of economic activity to the nation annually. It spans 95,000 miles of coastline, 25,000 miles of navigable waterways, and includes thousands of facilities, vessels, waterways, and associated enabling infrastructure. This vast system relies on cyberspace and emerging technologies to operate, innovate, and enhance efficiency. While the Coast Guard is committed to supporting and facilitating the adoption of innovative commercial technologies, we must remain clear-eyed about the potential for new technologies to also introduce new vulnerabilities that can be exploited by our adversaries, particularly in cyberspace. Coast Guard Cyber Command is at the forefront of this evolving technology and threat landscape, leveraging Coast Guard cyber capabilities and partnering with industry to control, secure, and defend our borders, facilitate commerce that is vital to our economic prosperity, strategic mobility, and maritime dominance, and respond to crisis and contingencies. Coast Guard cyber protection teams have conducted over 150 missions, including cybersecurity assessments, threat hunt operations, and incident responses on critical infrastructure and ports across the United States and overseas. While those missions are improving the cybersecurity posture in our ports, they are also revealing persistent cyber risks, such as compromised passwords, known vulnerabilities, outdated systems, as well as new cyber attack paths that our adversaries can and will attempt to exploit. Coast Guard cyber protection teams are helping industry identify and mitigate vulnerabilities, strengthen defenses, and implement cybersecurity frameworks to protect our marine transportation system. For example, leveraging the experience we gained through extensive assessment and threat hunt operations, we've provided comprehensive cybersecurity guidance to U.S. operators of ship-to-shore cranes manufactured in China, which account for approximately 80% of cranes in U.S. ports and constitute a significant supply chain risk. Beyond U.S. port facilities, we are also conducting defensive cybersecurity operations on U.S. flag vessels, as well as maritime adjacent and maritime enabling infrastructure vital to port operations. Indeed, ports are a complex web of interdependent systems, and we are taking an adaptable, flexible, and systems-based approach to keeping them safe. Cybersecurity is a team sport, and we do not do this work alone. As an armed force, a law enforcement agency, regulator and sector risk management agency, and a member of the intelligence community, the Coast Guard is fully leveraging our unique authorities and government and private sector partnerships to help secure the nation. This includes our unique role as a Service Cyber Component Command to U.S. Cyber Command and as a component of the Department of Homeland Security with access to and strong partnerships with CISA, TSA, FBI, the Department of Energy, EPA, and other departments and agencies with cyber and/or critical infrastructure protection responsibilities. Beyond our protection of the marine transportation system, we are also bringing our expertise and capability to bear to ensure that the Coast Guard's adoption of new technologies, such as new communications, surveillance, and remote and autonomous systems, can rapidly deliver new capabilities to our frontline operators without compromising the security and resilience of our own operational networks. As technology continues to revolutionize maritime commerce and Coast Guard operations, Coast Guard Cyber Command remains committed to continuously adapting its approach to meet the nation's needs. Our unique mix of authorities, capabilities, and partnerships, underpinned by our incredibly talented workforce, make us uniquely suited to this task. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Admiral. Chair now recognizes Mr. Von Hoff. You are recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Ezell, Ranking Member Carbajal, Ranking Member Larson, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss our recent work on commercial applications of autonomous ship technologies. Many commercial vessels today operate with some level of autonomous technology. Systems exist that can run certain ship functions or provide navigation and decision support. All current uses, though, have a human or humans who are in control or can take control if needed. As the technology develops, new cases will emerge for higher levels of autonomy. For example, companies have explored the business case for uncrewed short-distance cargo hauling and passenger transport, and there's currently a pilot program evaluating autonomous operation of vessels for at-sea rocket recovery. To date, Coast Guard has relied on its existing regulatory authorities to address these technologies as they emerge. These regulations allow for the testing of autonomous ships, provided the operator makes a request. Requests are typically made to the captain of the port, who is the Coast Guard officer responsible for activities within a designated area. Coast Guard issued guidance in 2024 for how captains of the port should deal with these requests. Under that guidance, the captain of the port evaluates proposals to assess the risks and applies existing regulations on a case-by-case basis. The captain of the port forwards these requests with a recommendation for approval or disapproval to the Commandant. At the time of our report in August 2024, just a handful of requests had been made. Since then, Coast Guard has received 48 such requests and reported that they were able to manage the operations at the local level in all cases. The guidance also makes clear that testing of autonomous ships cannot be conducted in a way that reduces the number of crew below what is prescribed in statute. To monitor the development of autonomous ships and whether any changes to existing regulations or authorities are warranted, Coast Guard has an internal advisory committee, AutoPOCO, who meets regularly to identify any legal, regulatory, or policy gaps and engages with industry stakeholders. At the time of our report, Coast Guard had determined that existing regulations were sufficient to deal with the requests it had received. Coast Guard emphasized that its policy is to only consider a new regulation when an existing statute or regulation cannot adequately address a need. However, as technology develops and autonomous operations are envisioned without crew on board, with remote crew, or with reduced crew levels, challenges to the existing legal framework will emerge. As I mentioned, Coast Guard cannot legally allow operations with fewer crew than is established in law. Further, any statute based on the assumption that humans are on board will present challenges. For example, it is not clear how autonomous ships without crew can comply with collision regulations, which require that every vessel has a lookout by sight and hearing. To evaluate whether the ships can safely operate with reduced remote or no crew, Coast Guard officials told us they would need to see actual examples of autonomous ships performing those functions, but so far there haven't been many. This may be because the technology is still being developed, some companies are unwilling to share proprietary information, or they're discouraged from testing because of the additional costs of complying with crew requirements. Furthermore, while Coast Guard's guidance encourages vessel owners and operators to keep records of their testing, Coast Guard would only receive information on the results of those tests at the discretion of industry. Ultimately, this is information that Coast Guard would need to fully evaluate whether the technology is safe. Internationally, IMO is currently developing a voluntary framework that addresses a variety of regulatory gaps, such as clarifying the human role in autonomous operations. Coast Guard has been involved in the development of this framework, leading several of the initiatives. As was mentioned, the framework is to be finalized for voluntary adoption in 2026, with an aim to develop and finalize mandatory guidelines by 2032. Other countries have experienced similar challenges to the Coast Guard in regulating autonomous ships, but they've taken slightly different approaches given that they have different legal authorities and different proposed uses in their waters. For example, the Norwegian maritime regulator was able to work with a company who developed an autonomous container vessel to test the safety of its technology, and after successful testing, they were able to reduce crew requirements. In Canada and the UK, maritime regulators have both developed specific guidance and regulations for small autonomous ships below 12 meters and 24 meters respectively, which allow remote operation and an alternative approval process. These are actions the Coast Guard would not be able to take without changes to its statutory authority. However, at the time of our report, none of the regulators we spoke to, including Coast Guard, were planning to pursue legislative changes until after the IMO finalizes the regulatory framework. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my statement. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes Mrs. Perry for 5 minutes for your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman Easel, Ranking Member Carbajal, Ranking Member Larson, and members of the subcommittee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify about a 2020 National Academy of Sciences report on leveraging unmanned systems for Coast Guard missions, and to offer my views on relevant technological developments since the report's publication. I am the Chief Technology Officer at the MIT Lincoln Laboratory, and I served as the chair of the study committee that developed the report. The report is the product of extensive information gathering and deliberation by 10 committee members, and personally, I found it a privilege to work with my colleagues on the study. I also want to offer my personal appreciation to Admiral Barata and Admiral Tama, and to the thousands of Coast Guard personnel who serve the nation so admirably every day. Over the course of our study, we benefited a great deal from the Coast Guard input. We also consulted with dozens of experts from industry, university, laboratories, and government agencies. The study committee's charge focused on the Coast Guard's existing and prospective use of unmanned systems to fulfill its critical and often unique missions. Because the subcommittee has previously heard testimony on the recommendations in the report, I will only recap that advice and spend more time on the continued developments in unmanned systems that have potential for Coast Guard application now. In its report, the committee documented a compelling need for the Coast Guard to proceed more aggressively, albeit strategically and deliberately, in leveraging UXS advancements. To this end, the committee recommended that the Coast Guard do the following. 1, issue a high-level unmanned systems strategy. 2, designate a senior official to advocate for the unmanned system strategy. 3, establish an unmanned system program office. 4, expand and normalize experimentation with unmanned systems. And 5, commission an internal study of needed funding for research, assets, integration, and personnel. In offering these recommendations, the NAS Study Committee saw the magnitude and breadth of opportunity for the Coast Guard to pursue unmanned systems in its multiple domains and across its many missions. 5 years after the report's publication, unmanned systems are being used today with high utility in the public and private sectors, buffeted by the rapid pace of development and integration of artificial intelligence, sensors, automation, and computing. Informed by the study committee's work, but also speaking for myself, my written testimony provides a summary of how the Coast Guard may be able to leverage and exploit new and emerging technologies. Specifically, the report outlined 3 key areas where autonomous systems technology could be leveraged at varying scales to augment U.S. Coast Guard capabilities, and in some cases transform how the Coast Guard executes certain missions. Since the report's publication, there has been much advancement in robotics and artificial intelligence. It has evolved from limited application to widespread commercial deployment, and in some mission areas, mainstream military use. Enabled by likewise improvements in sensing, data fusion, generative AI, edge compute, and communication capabilities, autonomous systems now hold even more potential to transform maritime operations in air, surface, and subsurface domains. In the use case where we're talking about remotely operated vehicles or close-in UXSs, consider now the mature technical work products that are available in the commercial market, where these vehicles now support multimodal sensors for perception or a capability to do mission data collection in advanced imagery and video analytics. The second autonomous systems use case involves independent vehicles in air or maritime domains through both surface and subsurface. In the air domain, rapid advancements of drone technology has fueled the use of UAVs more broadly in both commercial and military applications, and the latest generation of drones possess more opportunity to allow for improved flight capabilities, performing tasks with minimal or no human intervention. The third and finally most transformative opportunity presents at the district or area level, where a broad intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capability is now more possible given technical breakthroughs in satellite communication, advanced radar, novel optical systems technology, and generative AI. Proliferated low-cost satellite constellations in low Earth orbit will improve space-based sensing and communications, offering persistent detection, and it could certainly help the Air Force in many ways, as can AI as a force multiplier, reduce human workload in complex operations. I will note that some Coast Guard mission areas require further technology development. Not all is perfect, but there's much that can be done. In conclusion, I wish to thank the subcommittee for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Thank you all for your testimony today. We'll now turn to questions for the panel. I recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. Admiral Barata, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act provided $75 million to procure unmanned surface systems to support maritime domain awareness. We understand one of these unmanned systems already in use by the Coast Guard was the initial detection source for a $25 million drug interdiction in the Caribbean just a few weeks ago. To date, the Coast Guard has not shared a plan with this committee for the use of the Big Bill funds to support maritime domain awareness. Instead, the Coast Guard still appears to be relying on a patchwork of short-term contracts that could limit long-term mission readiness. What's the Coast Guard's plan for leveraging unmanned systems across the service, and specifically, how and when do you intend to deploy the OBBBA Autonomous Maritime Systems funding to expand the use of these systems?
Mr. Chairman, regarding the Coast Guard's efforts here, I think everyone will be, we're excited about where we've gotten to. We just listened to the National Academy of Sciences, Ms. Perry, talk about some of the recommendations in that report, and the Coast Guard feels like we've done, with your assistance, we've met many of these goals. We submitted a congressional report last week that talks about the efforts that we've done there, which include designated a robotics and autonomous systems PEO, a champion there, creating a program office, developing that strategy, and having that PEO execute that strategy. And the key part is the support we've gotten with the reconciliation funds. And so with the reconciliation funds right now, what we have set aside for the legislation is $350 million. About $266 million of that will be used for long-range UAS. Right now, what the Coast Guard is doing is we are doing market research. There's a lot of technology that's available out there. We are currently operating a JPO with Customs and Border Protection for the MQ-9. We're using another long-range system on the southwest border quite efficiently and effectively along the southwest and the California coast there, and we can talk a little bit more about that. The $75 million for the maritime unmanned systems we intend to use exactly for that. Surface systems, we've used about $11 million of that so far to renew our remote operational vehicles that are at our deployable forces, as well as some ground robots and some small UAS that will be used at the unit level. But we intend to execute those funds expeditiously in the next 6 to 12 months. And the long-range UAS, we intend to put an RFI out probably in the next couple months and execute those funds in the next, over the next half a year.
Thank you. So the Coast Guard is updating its unmanned system strategic plan to include specific actions, procurement intentions, and timelines for deployment. You are doing that?
That new RASPO will be solely responsible for updating that strategy and executing those funds. So we will take that back and make sure that we update that strategy. You're right, it's a couple years old now. We'll take a look at it and make sure it's aligned with the plan as it goes.
We're going to get that done. Okay, Admiral Tama, we have discussed at length the increased need to both utilize and regulate autonomous technologies. How must the Coast Guard cyber adapt to meet the challenges and opportunities posed by the increased reliance on these systems and its unable to connect, interconnectedness?
Mr. Chairman, this is an important area for us as we adopt this new technology, both in the commercial sector for the maritime transportation system, but also for the Coast Guard. It is critical that we make sure that we harness the benefits of that technology and the obvious efficiencies and capabilities associated with that, but we don't generate additional risks. You know, the most secure system is the system that's not connected to anything, but it's also likely the least useful system.
Right.
And we need to find that balance. We do that every day. Coast Guard Cyber Command, we are not constrained by a regulatory framework in the work that we do. We have technical experts, we have teams that work with industry on a daily basis to go out, to look at their technology that they maybe are actively deploying or considering deploying, and assess and work with industry to help find those vulnerabilities and identify them and mitigate them, sir.
Thank you. One more. How's the Coast Guard building out cyber expertise, and how are you utilizing that expertise existing DHS entities like CISA?
Yes, sir. We work very closely with CISA on a daily basis. We've had tremendous growth in our capability and capacity over the last few years, thanks to outstanding support from Congress. In fact, just this last Friday, we graduated our first all-Coast Guard class of cyber mission specialists from a very important training program that we partner with the Navy on that. And our folks, we have a great partnership with CISA, and we work together very closely every day, sir.
Thank you, sir. I yield back my time. Mr. Carbajal, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As usual, I will defer to committee ranking member, Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Carwell. So I gave you a forewarning in my opening, and it just was reported as well that the policy defining nooses and swastikas as potentially divisive has gone into effect. Actually, and I know the Commandant has said that these are prohibited. I don't know, I don't understand how it can be prohibited and potentially divisive at the same time. We passed a federal law in 2021 or 2, I forget what it was, actually making lynching a hate crime here in the United States. Nooses are directly associated with lynching, so I don't know how you can have a potentially divisive symbol of a noose and have lynching be a federal hate crime in the United States. So you may not be the person, but you're here, and so I'm asking, like, how can you square this circle for us? I appreciate what Commandant Lundy said and showed us November 20th or whatever day we met with him about the language that is operative as far as he goes, but the policy says something totally different.
Ranking Member, just to be perfectly clear, the Coast Guard has not, we do not now, and we won't tolerate any hate symbols within the Coast Guard. Our personnel work too hard. We have too many missions to complete. To the extent that instruction has been misinterpreted or is open to misinterpretation, the Commandant looked to close that gap by issuing a lawful general order, which oversteps any of the policy, and if anything fails at the unit level.
So get rid of the policy, or make the policy very clear what swastikas and nooses are. I want to get into swastikas. I don't like the, it's horrible.
No, Ranking Member, we agree. And for For our operators, for the field level, for our Coast Guard men and women, that the policy is clear and it's unambiguous, and the lawful order gives all of our unit commanders and our personnel all the tools that they need.
The only way to test this is if there's a coastie that does something to potentially violate it, right? Unfortunately. And then you are stuck enforcing it. And I want you to enforce it, but it's either potentially divisive or it's hateful, a hateful symbol. And then you'll have to decide. I've already decided. And you all need to decide to change the policy, because these are not potentially divisive. They are divisive. In fact, they're worse. They're hateful. But you came here for another reason, and I know Salute has other questions for you as well. The Navy has deployed 5 separate autonomous vehicles. One was built in my district, the USX-1 Defiant, and that's a DARPA program. There are 2 other DARPA platforms and 2 Strategic Capability Office platforms. Is the Coast Guard at all involved in monitoring, watching, assessing the operations of these to create some learning opportunities for y'all?
Ranking Member, absolutely. We take part at DIU and at DARPA. We're interconnected with many of the Joint Task Forces. We're working with 5th Fleet over in Bahrain. So a lot of the efforts that the Navy goes through, obviously they are leaders in this, as well as many industry members are. And so we have close connection with those folks. The RAS PEO that I mentioned, their staff actively works, across, everywhere that we get the R&D center, our Blue Technology Center of Expertise that this subcommittee helped us put in place. We are trying to capture everything that we can and field everything that we can as rapidly as possible.
Yeah, Admiral Tama, related to Chair Ezell's question about incorporating autonomous systems into the actual operation of a platform and the concerns that you have about the security of that. How are you going to, as much as you can, tell us, how are you going about ensuring the security of the incorporation of these systems so that they're protected?
Ranking Member, I think with everything, the great news is everything's connected today. The bad news is everything's connected today. And this is something we have to balance. We are every day under Force Design 28 rapidly prototyping new technologies, bringing them into our operational envelope, delivering those capabilities to the operator. And we are balancing that risk, the cybersecurity risk associated with that new tech, with the risk of potentially not delivering it or denying that capability from being delivered to our operators. So we iterate every single day, and we have the technical capability in Coast Guard Cyber Command, working with our colleagues in the C5I enterprise to manage this risk and find the right balance so we can deliver for our operators.
All right. Mr. Chair, if I just may, I want to congratulate the Coast Guard as well for more documented drug interdictions this year than anything the DoD has been able to demonstrate with its operations in the Caribbean. You all know how to do it, you're doing it right, and you're keeping us safe, and I appreciate that. I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields. Chair now recognizes Mr. Webster for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you doing this committee. Thank you all for your testimony. It was very helpful. Rear Admiral Barata, is the service keeping up with the regulation of new autonomous vessels and activities, do you think, in your opinion?
Congressman, there's a lot of technology that's coming out there. We think right now we're keeping pace with it based on the developments that are happening internationally and domestically. We think that as time goes forward, we agree with GAO that there will need to be more data that's brought in determining how we're going to regulate these, what constitutes a vessel, how we're going to separate the maritime users in the ports right now and keep everybody safe and secure as we try to make sure that the system runs as it's designed.
Under Force Design 2028, the Coast Guard created a Robotics and Autonomous Systems Program Executive Office. What's the Coast Guard's intent on this office, and how will it help advance the Coast Guard's use of unmanned systems?
So again, directly in line with the National Academy of Sciences report, we envision the RASPO to be the one-stop shop, the ultimate person responsible for autonomous and robotics systems. So, and what you'll see is that we've gone to this model for our ships, our planes, our C5I as well. And what this gives us is it consolidates many of the different divisions that we had previously for counter UAS, for aircraft systems, for surface systems, and puts all those under one heading. But even more than that, they're responsible for developing the training, the technology, acquiring, accounting for obsolescence as these systems get old, and also doing things like creating the robotics mission specialist, which is our new rate to help field these out in the field.
How will it integrate with the already existing program of Blue Technology Center for Expertise?
They're going to be closely aligned. We've set up a futures development and initiatives directorate with a rapid prototype office that oversees the R&D center. It oversees our folks at DIU. It oversees our folks at the Blue Technology Center of Expertise. And this RASPO is responsible for reaching out to the Blue Technology Center of Expertise, who is our way in to talk to the academia, the industry, new technology. And their job is to field all that, be aware of everything that's going on, and then actually rapidly bring that to the operator. I think for those of you who've been with the Coast Guard for a long time, you would be shocked to see how quickly we are acquiring, fielding, and starting to develop and integrate our systems.
Rear Admiral Tama, how's the Coast Guard improving cyber security to protect ports and key national infrastructure from growing cyber threats?
Congressman, the Coast Guard Cyber Command is laser focused on protecting our ports and critical infrastructure from growing cyber threats. As you know, sir, the threats are real. We face a broad spectrum of threats from both nation states to lone ransomware actors, and we have to operate and understand those threats and stay dynamic. We are sending teams out into ports around the country, Coast Guard cyber protection teams that are highly trained. They work closely with our captains of the port, and they operate on the .com domain with private sector entities. They will do what's called a threat hunt mission or an assessment mission. They will identify vulnerabilities. They will try to penetrate networks. They will emulate the activities of one of our adversaries. And then we will take those findings and we will provide a bespoke report to that entity so that they can mitigate those findings and improve their cybersecurity posture. The benefit to us is we aggregate all of that information, we anonymize it, and we share it with the entire industry so that everybody learns.
Well, I'm out of time, so I yield back, Chairman.
Gentleman yields. Chair recognizes Ranking Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Admiral Barata and Admiral Tama, representing Vandenberg Space Force Base, I care deeply about space activities. In the last Coast Guard bill, we included language creating a pilot program related to autonomous vessels and at-sea landing and recovery operations. What has the Coast Guard learned from this pilot program, and can the knowledge be applied elsewhere, assuming it got implemented?
Ranking Member, it absolutely got implemented. It has been very successful. We have two corporations that have been using it extensively to the tune of almost 120 launches and recoveries at sea safely. What the pilot program has given us is, where the authorities don't allow us to, reduce the manning on any of these systems, it has provided that opportunity for us to pilot that off the shores of Florida and see what that looks like. And I think we're going to need to see more of that as we move forward in order to evolve and mature the process of overseeing autonomous systems. But new company just had a successful launch the last week of November, so pretty amazing to see. So the pilot program has actually drawn in more corporations, and I think it's going to serve as the foundation of where we build the program.
Great, thank you. To both admirals, I wish Admiral Lundy were here today so we could express our frustration with him directly. The Coast Guard's recent action on hate symbols are completely unacceptable. Language matters, and I want to address Chapter 11 of the Harassing Behavior Prevention, Response, and Accountability Policy and the corresponding treatment of the display of nooses and swastikas. The Commandant told Ranking Member Larson and myself that he was going to fix the language to make it clear that the Coast Guard will not tolerate hate symbols. Instead, he released the policy as it was originally written. The guidance is clear on the display of the Confederate battle flag. It is prohibited. Admiral Lundy had the opportunity to classify swastikas and nooses the same way. He didn't. Instead, he's allowing two contradictory policies, hate policies, one that condones hate symbols and one that does not. This is outrageous, to say the least. If it is the Coast Guard's position that the display of a noose or swastika is potentially divisive, what are the scenarios where it is not divisive? You have two policies.
Ranking Member, from the Coast Guard standpoint, these are hate symbols. There's no gaps between the definition. I think one of the purposes of the policy, which I was not part of writing, but the intent is that has been expressed to us is that there are hate groups that have been co-opting symbols as we go, and we are trying to give latitude to our commanding officers to be able to see what those groups might be doing at our units and act on those, no matter if they're not articulated distinctly. So the reason for the lawful general order was to ensure that there were no misunderstandings to clarify that part of the policy.
I'll take your answer, but it's not sufficient. Let me end by saying this. I'll end by offering a question to my Senate colleagues, obviously not here in the House. Given the Commandant's refusal to issue consistent guidance on nooses and swastikas, an issue where there should be no ambiguity, he had the authority to stop that policy from being printed. Instead, he let it go, it got printed, and then he issued his general order as well, two contradictory policies. How can the Senate move forward with a confirmation vote this week if these actions don't elicit confidence? That's more of a statement than a question. But I wanted to conclude that way, and thank you very much for being here today.
Gentleman yields. Chair recognizes Mr. McDowell for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I want to touch on, before I get into my questions, something that I did this weekend and yesterday, and I would imagine that I'm the only member of Congress in history who's ever killed a bear and then voted in the same day. And I did that with a Coast Guard veteran from North Carolina, Captain Ernie Dozier. And he's the captain of the Gecko, sport fishing boat out of Ocracoke Island, and served our country in the Coast Guard. And so I just want to take a minute to give a shout out to Captain Dozier and to thank him and to thank you all for the work that you do every day with drug interdiction, with keeping people safe, and all you do, and you do this all at a fraction of the budget that you actually need. So I just wanted to say thank you for what you do. But Mr. Vana, I have a question for you. As the Coast Guard is responsible for safeguarding our maritime transportation systems from cyber threats. And that includes our ports, terminals, vessels. In your opinion, does the Coast Guard have the actual resources they need to meet the critical cyber mission here?
Thank you, Representative McDowell, for that question. Our work didn't evaluate whether they have sufficient manpower or the expertise in the cybersecurity area. We were focused on, how they were approaching regulation of commercial autonomous vessels. We have work in the past looked overall at the Coast Guard's workforce and have raised concerns generally about workforce planning, and ensuring that they have the people that they need, and we've made recommendations around those issues. But as far as specific, whether they have the specific expertise in this case, I'd have to defer to.
Yeah, Admiral Tama, I'll ask you, do you all have the resources you actually need for this?
Sir, thank you for recognizing our Coast Guard veteran, Mr. Dozier, down in North Carolina. Sir, Force Design 28, which is the Secretary's direction to build a more agile, capable, and responsive Coast Guard, calls for growing the Coast Guard by 15,000 people. This includes 3 areas. 1, restoring readiness. 2, operating the new assets that have been funded through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And number 3, to counter emerging threats. And we would squarely put cybersecurity, things like cybersecurity, counter UAS in that emerging threat bucket. And we've answered this question. We absolutely believe that we need more capacity on this front. We have 3 cyber protection teams. We recently commissioned our first offensive cyber team, the 1915 National Mission Team, which is countering our adversaries in cyberspace. But we need some additional capacity there to get after that threat, sir.
As you examine how other countries have approached the same challenge that we're now looking at, what lessons can we learn about how best to balance innovation with safety? And what do you think, who has gotten this right?
Sir, I think on the cyber front, the United States is leading the way in a number of areas with respect to cybersecurity. The recent rulemaking that the Coast Guard initiated in July of this year is actually a very significant muscle movement in terms of increasing the cybersecurity posture of our critical infrastructure. And we, in Cyber Command, we add to that posture. We don't use a compliance-based framework because compliance alone isn't enough to enhance cybersecurity. You need to get out there and work with industry. And I think the advantage that we have in the United States is the incredible power in our private sector, and we have to work very closely with the private sector to address this issue.
Rear Admiral Barata, can you touch on how you all plan to coordinate or how you're already coordinating with the Navy to test these unmanned aircraft systems?
Yes, Congressman. We are working closely, in a couple different fronts with the Department of War throughout, with DHS, Department of Justice. We have several work groups that focus on these types of issues. Obviously, we're working in close conjunction with them. They've the other armed services have had a lot of experience with this overseas in combat zones. One of the medium UAS that we're using right now on the back of our national security cutter, which contributed greatly to this this historic interdiction year that we've had for drugs, has been very, very successful, and it's provided the Coast Guard a new asset that vertically takes off and lands, which replaces one that we had to launch from a catapult. For Coast Guard, we're kind of Coast Guard size. All of our ships are really compact on size, and so for us to have this type of capability that we've garnered from the other armed services is going to allow us to put it on all of our cutters, but we'll have all the national security cutters outfitted by next summer.
Great. Well, thank you for all you guys do. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thanks, Congressman.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Shelton, my friend from Michigan, for 5 minutes of question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to our chairs and ranking members for organizing this incredible hearing today. And thank you to our distinguished panel and all the work that you do. I would be remiss if I did not open my remarks the same way as my colleagues did, which is just expressing deep dismay over the policy allowing additional confusion over the use of swastikas and nooses back into our United States Coast Guard. This administration has criticized Democrats for their, quote, woke policies that distract us from the true mission of the armed forces, but it seems to me that this administration is the one who is obsessed with these policies and symbols that they deem woke, spending more time on declassifying divisive symbols and changing our fonts from actually improving the efficiency of our armed forces. Furthermore, the danger and distraction of these policies are terribly harmful for our coasties. The world is still reeling from the horrible anti-Semitic terrorist attack on Bondi Beach that killed 15 innocent people just trying to celebrate Hanukkah. The fear is alive. The United States Coast Guard has a choice. Will it choose to protect its service members from hate and harassment? It is our job to make sure it does. My first question is regarding the Coast Guard's ability and what additional needs you have to continue your great work around drug interdiction. Earlier today, we attended a confidential briefing on recent lethal boat strikes on suspected drug vessels. While I cannot and will not disclose the details of that briefing, I am happy to share that I am wholly dissatisfied with this administration's approach to stopping drugs from flooding into our nation, and dissatisfied with their explanation for why this is necessary. Our United States Coast Guard is the best in the world when it comes to stopping drugs. Far more interdictions than the DOD, as our ranking member just said. You all have the best capabilities to board suspected drug boats, apprehend smugglers, and destroy illegal drugs before they reach our shores. The narco-terrorists who are threatening our country present a real danger. Tens of thousands of Americans are killed each year from cocaine overdoses laced with fentanyl, and millions more lives are destroyed as a result. We have to take this threat seriously, which means stopping these drugs before they come to our country, not blowing up innocent anglers who are just trying to catch their dinner. Rear Admiral, what additional technologies could assist the Coast Guard in supporting its mission to interdict illegal drugs?
Congresswoman, I think the ranking member in his opening statement mentioned that we would need sustained funding to support the big, beautiful bill that we've gotten, and I think that is probably the first and foremost. The technologies that we're starting to field that we've gotten some monies for are very helpful. It's a good start for us to recapitalize. But what we'll need to do in the future is continue to sustain all those assets that we get. As our autonomous systems become obsolete, we'll have to replace those. And then, as Admiral Tama mentioned, we're going to need new technologists. We're going to need new types of ratings, folks to do data, folks to do cyber, and so those would we would need to move forward.
We are very supportive of new technologies. We think it's essential moving forward. We're all here to support additional funding streams. We want to be sure, however, that these new technologies are not replacing our service members, right? We can retrain them, we can enhance them, we can continue to grow the force. I'm deeply concerned with potential closures of search and rescue units across the country as a result, specifically right back home in Michigan. To be clear, any Coast Guard station closure in West Michigan is wholly unacceptable, particularly given the rapid growth that we are seeing in this region as a whole. We look forward to offlining with your team about that in ways that we can continue to enhance these particular stations. I want to get to one more question in particular. It is critical for the Coast Guard to preserve new and advanced technology platforms, but we also need to ensure that the service leverages innovation to enhance the capabilities of its current fleet, squeezing every bit of mission value out of proven vessels. Michigan Wheel, a company in my district, has developed innovative wake-adapted propulsion technology to assist the fast response cutters in hitting speed, fuel efficiency, and vibration targets. I would love to invite you out and visit this incredible company and everything that they do. It is truly a pride of West Michigan. How can the Coast Guard and Department of Homeland Security revise their acquisition and contracting regulations to assure that OEM technology is maintained throughout a vessel's life cycle? If the chairman allows, I'll take this question, but you're also happy to, or your response to the question, but you're also happy to submit it for the record.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you. Just 30 seconds if you
Okay, thanks, Congresswoman. And we'll be happy to provide some additional comments on it. But just in answer to your question, I think this reorganization that we've done under force design, one of the things we did was we have a program executive office now called C, which is for our ships, along with our aircraft and our robotics. And so, that group right there is our entry point to do all the things that you're talking about. If there's innovations that are available, and then, with our futures development integration folks, they can take that technology, put it quickly, test it out, see if it works for us, and then field it.
Thank you.
Happy to put you in touch with them, yes.
Appreciate that. Yes, we'll take you up on that. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. Mr. Garamendi, you're recognized, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Ezell. Thank you for the testimony and for my colleagues and their questions, honing down on some very, very important issues. We really have two issues before us. One is new types of vessels, autonomous vessels, how to deal with those, and the second is the cybersecurity issue. With regard to the new autonomous vessels, there was mention of the IMO effort, which is underway and likely to be completed in the near term. It seems to me that there's a great deal to be learned from that, and it may very well answer many of the questions and free up a lot of your time to follow along and adapt and modify as necessary for the United States. So I draw your attention, you're already attending to that, but it seems to me that there's a great deal of advancement quickly that can be achieved from the IMO effort, and I suspect you're already involved in that writing of that. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman. We lead on that subcommittee. We've helped author that. We participate on that joint working group.
Very good. I encourage you to continue that effort. It may save you a lot of time and a lot of person power along the way. So the autonomous vessels are out there. We're going to have to deal with those, and we'll need to have the appropriate regulatory and law. The law is here, and we've got some heavy work to do. On the cybersecurity piece of this, it seems to me that the Coast Guard has always been lean. You've never had the money that you need to do everything that you want to do, even though the Big Ugly Bill does provide some significant funding. You talked about some $256 million for long-range autonomous. I assume these are aerial platforms. Perhaps they are also water platforms. Is that?
It's a combination of the $266 million is for long-range aircraft systems, and then the $75 million is for the surface vessels.
I see. Very good. We all want to make sure that our district is well represented, and I've got one, and I'll get to it in a few moments. With regard to cybersecurity, you did mention in your testimony that you're partnering with the Navy on this issue. Could you please expand on that for a minute or so? Talk to me about that partnership that you're working with the Navy with regard to cybersecurity. Is it training? Is it also more than that, using systems that they're developing and bringing them home?
Yes, sir.
Admiral Tama, you jumped at this, so you want to handle it?
Sorry, Congressman. Admiral Tama is the commander of our Coast Guard Cyber Force, so I'll let him take a first crack at it, and maybe if there's some regulatory stuff, I'll handle it.
Yes, sir. For the cyber perspective, we are a member of the Joint Force at all times and a component of U.S. Cyber Command as a service cyber component. We work very closely with the Navy's Fleet Cyber Command on a daily basis, and we collaborate on protecting our nation from evolving cyber threats. Our cyber personnel, our enlisted workforce, our cyber mission specialists are actually going through, and we are leveraging a Navy training program called the Joint Cyber Analysis Course down at Corey Station in Pensacola, Florida, and that's how we are leveraging our partnership in terms of building our expertise. And with your permission, sir, maybe Admiral Barata might have something to add on this, sir.
Please, expand.
The only thing I'll add, sir, is Admiral Tama mentioned earlier our cyber regulation that's coming into effect. And so that'll be applicable to all MITSA-regulated vessels and facilities, which will include some Department of War outloads.
Well, there are at least two members of the committee, in addition to myself, so I'm going to bring up the SHIPS Act. There is in the SHIPS Act a maritime incubator program that would be available to address some of these issues, to fund and to bring together innovators, as well as the various military and Coast Guard that might want to use it. So keep the SHIPS Act in mind. There's money there, should we get it through the law. I now want to spend just a moment. Does the GAO, have you done any report on the cybersecurity relationships within the military, and specifically as it applies to the Coast Guard?
I have not done work in that area, Representative Garamendi. We can certainly get back to you if we have some work in some of our other teams that
I was
might be
reading some
applicable.
documents that there's a significant problem. The Cybersecurity Command is off there doing what it's doing, and then the men and women and the personnel that do cybersecurity get divorced from that, and there is great variation between the various sectors in the Department of Defense, and I suspect also with the Coast Guard, as to the quality of the work that's being done. Now, the Coast Guard may be able to hang on to its people longer than the other military departments, but there's an ongoing question about the quality and also the relationship of those men and women that are assigned to the various operating sectors as to whether they are continuing to work with Cyber Command, or are they just now orphans out there? Mm-hmm. Not at all clear. There's an issue that hopefully the Armed Services Committee will deal with, and it may be of interest to the Coast Guard. Well, I'm well over time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the extra minute.
No problem. Chair recognizes Mr. Van Drew for 5 minutes of testimony. Question.
Thank the chairman. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate you. As you know, I'm a big fan of the Coast Guard, the work you do, and I've been supportive through the years. I'm going to get in the weeds a little bit today and have a little bit of tougher questions. I just wanted to go over something first. The Coast Guard's issuance of CVC policy, and I know you're familiar with it, letter 24-02, is undermining, in my opinion, and many others, congressional intent, bypassing the law set forth in the Coast Guard Authorization Act of 2016. And it's putting working fishermen in an impossible position. We should be working with this fishermen, trying to help them. I believe it should be withdrawn immediately. I want to say that again. I believe it should be withdrawn immediately. This issue is not an abstract one. It's not something that you can't conceptualize. It's not theoretical. It's not academic. It's real for real working people in the water. It's harming fishermen, shipyards, and maritime workers in my district and across the entire East Coast. Just when our president wants to revive maritime industry, is supportive of the fishing industry, somehow we're going in an opposite direction here. Congress created the alternative to class pathway for a reason, a good reason. Mandatory vessel classification was crushing domestic shipbuilding and pricing small operators completely out of new construction. Lawmakers deliberately, purposefully chose a different model, one that allows safe, modern new builds which are overseen by independent marine surveyors, not monopolized by classification societies. Policy Letter 2402 reverses that choice. Right now, in fact, vessels are operating under temporary safety stickers that you all are aware of, while owners scramble to pay tens of thousands of dollars for retroactive classification. These aren't paperwork problems. They're not just little technical problems. These are real livelihoods that are at stake. People we should be supporting and helping, defending. When fishermen are forced to keep older vessels in service because new construction is blocked or delayed or so difficult to do, safety at the end of the day does suffer. And when domestic shipyards lose work, our maritime workforce shrinks and it hurts the United States of America. Rear Admiral Barata, thank you again for being here today. We do appreciate it. Dozens of stakeholders formally petitioned the Coast Guard to withdraw or revise this policy. Those petitions were rejected, preserving the same, what I believe to be unlawful framework. Why is the Coast Guard choosing to enforce class-based control through a policy letter rather than following U.S. statute, the statute that Congress wrote, and remaking the process the law requires?
Congressman, we are tracking this issue very closely, obviously, and we appreciate the concerns of the folks in your district. And we know that Cape May is not the only thing. There's some fishing fleets there that are quite active and do quite a bit of work. Part of that oversight, though, is the safe operation of those. And so that policy letter is an attempt for us to put a safety standard in place that is that can be complied with, that can be understood broadly and applied broadly. We know that there's not an easy way to comply with it right now, and that's why we're trying to take no action on those fishing vessels while we do that. We have worked, we have met with the groups, several groups, one last week of marine surveyors and one this week, and we think we have a way forward to help the fishermen resolve that. In the meantime, we don't want to impact their operations while we determine that way forward for them.
And I appreciate that, and I would say to you, please don't let it stagnate. Please don't forget about it. Please get this done, because it is unwieldy the way that it is right now. We can do better than that. I get it. You want safety, so do I, so does Congress generally. I think that we need to come up with something that, a system, and I think you sound like you're working on it, that ensures the safety, but at the same time doesn't make it virtually impossible for compliance. It just hurts the industry. It's hard enough. We're always competing with the rest of the world for everything, and that even includes fishing in some ways these days. So we want to help our fishermen, our American fishermen, as much as we can. We need your help with that. We need your support with it. And I'm not only speaking for them, but for people in general who value what they do. So I would say to you, I hope it doesn't take years to straighten this out, that this is something you can focus on, make a main priority, and any reports that you have or any progress that you make, I would appreciate it if you would keep in touch with the committee and also make sure that I know about it. It isn't only Cape May and the whole Jersey coast. I have Ocean County, Cape May County, Atlantic County, but it's the whole damn East Coast. I mean, it's a big deal. So I appreciate you, and please let us know what's going on. With that, I yield back to the chairman.
Gentleman yields. I've just got one more question. Admiral Barata, what's the current status of the regulatory certification for wing-in-ground aircraft?
Chairman, we're still working towards that. We intend to meet the deadline of May 2026. We're working closely with the FAA right now to put an MOU together that makes sense, that puts them in the position to oversee the aircraft portion of that and for the Coast Guard to see the vessel portion of that. But we're moving ahead. Moving ahead.
All right. I want to just make one statement here. Master Chief Tattoo is a third generation Master Chief. His grandfather entered the Coast Guard in 1949. For them combined together for more than 75 years of service. So thank you for that, and thank you all for being here today. Does anyone else have anything?
We got a question for the record.
Okay. All right. Question for the record. Honorable Rear Admiral David C. Barata, Deputy Commander. Okay. Got it. All right. The at-sea recovery pilot program was authorized for 5 years in 2022 and was intended to help the U.S. Coast Guard think through limitations of the current regulatory framework for autonomous vessels. Additionally, the International Maritime Organization is working on a related framework for autonomous vessels. Are there additional statutory authorities that would provide the Coast Guard with more flexibility and lead to streamlined assets that would provide the Coast Guard with more flexibility, improve the nation's ability to set innovative international standards. This program expires in December of 2027. How long should this program be intended to ensure the Coast Guard has sufficient time to build a flexible regulatory regime for autonomous vessels? Are there any additional lessons learned or challenges faced in continuing to operate this pilot program? That's for the record.
Oh, for the record. Okay.
All right, where we at here? Closing statements. Thank you all, gentlemen. Is there anybody that wants to be recognized? Anybody? Okay. Seeing none, that concludes our hearing today. I would like to thank each and one of our witnesses for your testimony and putting up with me. This subcommittee is adjourned.